Hello friends, in this video we shall see how a file uploading operation is done in a Flask application.
And so this is the Python script which we will use to upload any selected file to our WSGI server that we will the server will start running as soon as you start or execute this Python script upload.py. So for that, this is a very essential import that you must mention in our Python script at the beginning. You have to import the secure file name function, which is defined in the workzug module, which will be installed along with the Flask module that you have to install to set up the Flask environment. Okay, so after doing all the required imports, you set up the Flask application by declaring an object of the Flask class. This invariably you have to do every time when you write a Flask application. In the rest of the Python code, there are two URL rules that are defined. One is /upload, which is mapped to a Python function upload, and then there is a /uploader rule mapped to uploader function. The purpose of this /upload rule, that means the function of the view, the purpose of this view function upload is to render a template upload.html. So this upload.html must be present in the templates folder of your Flask application. What is there in this upload.html file? It contains a multi-part form data, a form with enc type which is set to multi-part, and then there is a input type is equal to file. This is our upload.html, in which this is a form, right? This form has one attribute called as enc type, which must be set to multi-part /form data. Whenever you want the form to have a button which will browse your computer system to select a particular file, the enc type attribute must be set to multi-part /form data, and the method also must be post. In order to present a browse button in the form, you should use this input type is equal to file. The name that is appearing on that button will be file. As soon as this button named file is clicked, your Windows Explorer will be presented, allowing the user to select any desired file from anywhere in the computer system, file system, and then there is a submit button. So this submit button, when it is pressed, the selected file, the data of the selected file will be sent to this this URL, which is a part of the action attribute. So action is equal to this URL. This is of course the name of our server, localhost 5000 /uploader URL, which is defined in our Python script. To this URL, this file will be sent, right? So this is the upload.html. Coming back to this, the uploader URL, and therefore the mapped view function uploader. What it does, it verifies whether the request dot method, that means the data that is received by this uploader URL, is by this post method or not. And we have just seen that in the upload.html the form has method is equal to post, so this is true. So the file data is obtained from request.files object. So f is equal to request.files file. So this will be the file object that must be saved. F.save, this file object has a function called as save, and this secure file name is a function in this workzug module which which will obtain the required destination file name by f.file name. So when this save function will be successfully completed, the uploader function will return a message called as file uploaded successfully, which will be displayed on the browser. This is of course the this app.run will start our server. So it's a very fairly simple, straightforward activity. This upload.html contains a form with a file button, and this uploader URL uploader function will save the file data to the file name of the same name on the server. So that we have to see now by running this application. So our Python script is named as upload.py. We shall start. The server starts running. Then we go back to the browser and give this URL in the address bar localhost 5000 oblique upload. So as soon as I press enter, the button, rather the form with a browse button and a submit button will be displayed. So click on this browse, select any file that you want to upload on the server. So let us say I will open this file and press open. The selected file name will appear here. Now if I press on this submit button, the /uploader URL will be used to send the file data, and the uploader function will save the file data to a file name called as tp python.jpg in the server folder. So it responds with the file uploaded successfully.
In this video, we shall see how to use the Flask mail extension.
So I have already started or activated the virtual environment, and now inside this I will have to see whether this Flask mail extension has been installed or not. How to verify that? Just try to reinstall or install it again by using the pip utility. If it is not there, it will be installed. Otherwise, it will say it is already present. So let us see. It is available in the pip utility is available in scripts folder. Pip Flask mail is the name of the extension. So the requirement is already fulfilled or satisfied. That means the Flask mail extension is installed. Another way of verification or verifying it is that start the Python interpreter and say import. If it is able to import, then that means it is installed. So that means Flask mail is properly installed in this virtual environment. And now this is the Flask application code. In the beginning, you have to import the Flask class from the Flask module. Also import the mail and message classes from the extension that we just now installed, Flask mail. Set up the application object app is equal to flask _name. This app object is the argument to the mail class constructor. So this is the mail object of the mail class. Then this is necessary to do certain configuration settings to your application class by specifying the mail server. Here we are going to use the SMTP server of the Gmail service. So the name of the SMTP server is smtp.gmail.com. The recommended port number is 465. These are the login credentials, the username and password, and these are the security settings. I am setting mail use TLS parameter of the configuration app.conf is equal to false, but SSL is equal to true. So these are all the configuration settings that you must enable. And now to this root URL, the index function that is mapped, inside which what is happening, I am setting up a message class object, and it takes three mandatory arguments: the subject, the sender, and the recipient. The sender and recipient IDs, and then the body attribute of this message object. This is the text that you want to send as an email, and then use the send method of the mail class. The method will be sent, the message will be sent. Okay, so this is the application code. But before running the Python application code, the Flask application code, you have to do one more setting operation. Go to this URL after logging into your Gmail account. Open google.com settings, security, and less secure apps, and ensure that access for less secure apps is turned on. By default it is off, because the Gmail service or Gmail server does not allow mails to be sent by any third-party applications. Now that our application, our Flask application, will not be allowed to send the mail on behalf of the Gmail service. So therefore, in order to let the Gmail allow that, turn this setting on. Access for less secure apps, turn it on. So that is very essential for the successful execution of your code. Now coming back to the virtual environment command prompt, now execute that this mail.py, python mail.py will start the server. So the server is started. I will now go in the browser and visit this URL, localhost 5000 /. So I have opened the browser and given the URL as localhost 5000 /. As soon as I press enter, the message on my browser says message is sent. So in order to verify that the message is sent, I'll go in my inbox, and there you see the message hello. It was the subject of the message, hello Flask. This message is sent from the Flask mail, was my body of the message. So that is how you can use this SMTP server of Gmail to send an email message through our Flask application. So this was the demonstration of the entire exercise.
In this video, we shall see the use of Flask WTF extension in a Flask application.
So I will now show you the use of WT forms extension in a Flask application. So the name of the extension is Flask_WTF. So first and foremost, we have to ensure that this Flask WTF extension is installed in our Flask environment or not. So the usual way of installing a particular module is by using the pip. So this is the virtual environment in which we are working, and using the pip utility I will try to install the Flask WTF extension. it says that this is already present or installed in this environment. If it was not present, then it would have installed the Flask WTF extension. We can also verify whether this Flask WTF extension is present or not. What I will do, I will start the interpreter and try to import Flask WTF. If it accepts, then fine. Otherwise, it will mean that the extension is not present. Okay. So come out of this. Now, what are the components or what are the different code snippets that are needed for the rendering of the form? So first you have to design the form. This Flask underscore WTF module contains a class called as form. This form is to be used as a base class for your user defined form class. I am calling it as contact form. So my contact form is based upon this form class which I am importing from the Flask WTF. It also has a module called as WT forms, in which all the form elements like text field, integer field, text area, etc., all are present. So we have to import all those that are needed to design this particular form. So in my form, a text field, integer field, text area field, submit field, which is equivalent to the submit button in the text in the HTML, radio field, and the select field. These many types of fields I am going to use, so I have imported them. And I also want to apply certain validators to the some text field, some fields. So I am also importing the validators and the validation error. So in the contact form class, the objects that are declared is name is equal to text field. This is the label of that text field, name of the student, and the validation applied to this name field is validation required. If the validation fails, then the error message that should be displayed is please enter your name. Then another object is a radio field object. I am calling it as gender. This is the label, and the exclusive choices to be made are male and female. So they are presented in the form of a list object in which two tuples, the name of the variable and the associated caption, name and the caption, they are provided. So this is the gender field. Address field is a text area field. Then I have to again provide a text field for email. So email is equal to text field. This is the label, and the validation that I want to apply. There are two types of validation. One is that the validators required will be verified. If it is not at all entered, then the error message, please enter your email ID. And there is another validator I want to apply to this text field, validators.email. It will ensure that the entry in this field is according to or as per the requirements of an email address. So then there is an integer field called as age, selection field or select field, which will give you a drop down, and the user can make choices out of these two entries, C++ and Python. So these are the actual text that will appear, and these are the two names that are associated with each of them. And then there is a submit field which is equivalent to the submit button. So this is how you have to design the form first. I am calling it as a contact form. In my execution code, I have to import this contact form also. So let us have a look at the execution side of our Python script. So this is the application code. Here the Flask application object is declared, before which all the necessary resources from the Flask application are imported, as well as the contact form that we have designed, that is also imported. Ensure that there is a secret key in place. Now one URL rule is defined in this code, which is called as /contact, accepts the methods get or post. What is the associated view function? Contact, and in which first and foremost create the object of our contact form class. Right? Now inside this contact function, verify whether the request dot method is post or not. So obviously when the user enters the localhost 5000/contact in the address bar of the browser, the method will not be equal to post, it will be get. So that means this will be encountered. Right, because it is the first time the user has directly entered this URL, so it will not be a post method but a get method. So in case it is a get method, then what it has to do, the browser will be redirected towards, or rather a template will be rendered of the name contact.html, which takes one attribute or one argument, which is the form, is equal to our form object. So it will go into the contact.html. We'll have a look at this contact.html later. If on the other hand the method is post, but the validation of the form, which form? The contact form that we have designed. If the validation fails, then a message will be flashed, all fields are required. Where this flash will appear? It will appear in the next view function when the render, the template contact.html will be rendered. On the top of it, this flash message will be displayed, along with any error messages that the form might have generated. So in either way, if the method is post but there are errors, the contact.html will reappear, or if the method is not post, the contact.html will be appearing. If the validation is successful, if the post method is there, validation is successful, then the success.html will be rendered. It will just display a success message. Okay, so this is the execution part of our Python script. So what remains? Have a look at the contact.html. So this is the contact.html, which is basically rendering the form that we have designed. So in this form, all the form elements that we have designed using our WT forms package, those elements are rendered here. For example, we have seen that any of these form elements that are used from the WT forms, in addition to whatever form, elements or form fields that you design, one additional element is created, which is a hidden tag. And in addition to that, we have defined a name form field. It has two attributes, label and name. Gender has a label and the gender as a field. Address has a label, address as a field. Email has a label and field. Age, language, etc. And lastly the form.submit. So all we are doing is dynamically rendering the form elements or the different form fields that we have defined in our contact form into this browser web page by using the Jinja 2 template mechanism. You can see that all these form.name is the name of the name field which we have defined in the contact form. So that is dynamically rendered by using this double curly bracket notation to escape out of the HTML. So this is how the form is rendered dynamically on the browser. Before which if the form has already been posted and if it encounters any error or messages, those are flashed onto the browser. For instance, if there are any messages, like there was one message, all the fields are necessary, that message will be displayed on the browser with the help of get flashed messages and taking one flashed message at a time. Incidentally, in our case, there will be only one message. So that will be displayed here. If while encountering the validation of the name field, if it encounters any error, then that message will be displayed here. If while validating the email field, if it encounters error, that will be displayed here. So if the form is appearing for the first time, the entire form will be displayed. If it is appearing subsequently, then if there are any errors or messages, those will be flashed. Now this is our contact.html. So we have seen the form class, the contact form, the application side of the form example in which all the URLs and the associated view functions are defined, and this is the contact form, contact.html. In addition to that, there will be a success.html also, which will just print out the message form posted successfully if there are no errors found in the form after the form is posted. So this is all the code that we have. Now we will do all the activities one by one to show that this is how the WT forms are used. So let us come to the command prompt and execute our Python script named as form example.py. It will start the server. Okay, so now we shall go to the browser and give the URL as localhost 5000/contact. So in the browser, /contact. So the contact form is displayed. Okay, so different possibilities we shall generate and see what are the error messages. For example, I will leave this name of the student blank, fill the rest of the elements, and make the selection. You see, all the fields are required. Secondly, I will enter some element here, but I will purposefully enter the email in some invalid manner. It will say, please enter your email address, which is not proper. If on the other hand, if all the elements are, all the entries in the form are properly mentioned, Then of course the form will be validated and the message form posted successfully will appear. So that's how a user friendly form can be designed by using the Flask WTF extension in a Flask application.
In this video, I shall tell you how to use a SQLite database in our Flask application.
So how to use an SQLite database as a backend to your Flask application, that we want to see with the help of this demonstration and example. So a database.db, SQLite database named as database.db, is already present in the Flask applications folder, and there is inside this database.db there is a table called students, and the structure of the students table is that there are such four fields: name, address, city and pin code. Okay, and now this contents of this database.db I am showing with the help of a software called as SQLite Studio. So this is the structure of this table, and presently these 5 records are already present in it. This SQLite Studio is a front end for manipulating and managing the SQLite tables. You can create a table, add the data, run different queries and so on. But then that is not our intention to use SQLite. I am just using this SQLite Studio to show the effect of the Python Flask application in the database. What happens, how when we run an SQL query for insert a record, we'll come back to this SQLite Studio and see whether that insertion is properly done or not. And then when we run a select query on this database through our Flask application, we will verify whether the same records that are seen here will be displayed on our browser or not. So that is the purpose of SQLite Studio using here. Okay, so we are interested in the students table. This is the structure and these are the records at this point of time in this table. Now the Python code for performing or manipulating the database, that code is written in this run.py. Python's standard distribution already comes with a SQLite 3 module, so you don't have to additionally install any other module in order to use SQLite database as a backend to your Python program. So all you have to do is just import this SQLite 3 into your application. Of course, you will have to import all these prerequisites: the Flask class, the render template function and the request object. Now in this code or in this program or in this Python script, there is one URL that is defined as backslash. So that means local host 5000 backslash. This backslash URL is mapped to the view function called home, and what it is doing, it is just rendering a home.html template. So you have to say return render template home.html. So what is there in home.html? Just a menu kind of thing which will have two hyperlinks. One to add, when you click that add record, the activity of adding a record will start, and the other is list. So let us have a look at this home.html before proceeding. So this is the HTML code for this home.html, in which nothing but there are two hyperlinks. One hyperlink to the statement or sentence add new records, to which a slash enter new URL is hyperlinked, and the other is show list. It is hyperlinked to another URL slash list. So obviously these two URLs are defined in your run.py Python code. But then as far as this home.html is concerned, when this is rendered, you will see a menu below which you will see two hyperlinks, one taking you to add new record, other taking you to show list. Fine. So let us come back to the Python code. This is one URL that is defined. The other is, as we just saw, slash enter new. So when the user clicks that add new record hyperlink, he will come here, right? And this URL is attached or mapped with this view function, new student. So what will happen? Another template which is present in the templates folder of your Flask application called student.html, that will be rendered. So obviously we have to now have a look at student.html. What is the contents of that student.html? So this is the student.html. It is nothing but a form is present here. In the form there are the different form elements are, one is a input type is equal to text for name, address is provided, and text area. Then city, input type is equal to text, name is equal to city, and a pin code, in name is equal to pin, and the input type is equal to text is there. So there are essentially four text boxes, and then there is a submit button. Those are all the form elements in the form. Importantly, the form attributes are here. Method attribute is set to post, and the action attribute is set to the URL for add record or add rec function, which is there in the Python code. What is the URL for this add rec? That will be taken up as the action attribute of this form. Okay, so when the user clicks the add new record link, he will be presented a form to fill the data and submit. The submit will take you to this view function add record or add rec as it is written there. So come back to the Python code and see what is there in add rec. This is that URL defined with the help of this root decorator slash add rec methods post and get. So if the form has been posted, then what will happen? The request.form object. What is the request.form object? It is essentially a dictionary of the form element and its associated values. So those associated values will be stored in the variable nm, addr, ct, and pin. Request.form nm will fetch the name, address, city, and pin code. Right. So all the form data is now coming into your Python code. Okay. Now then, establish the connection with the database that we are using. SQL.connect function will establish the connection. Using this connection object, obtain the cursor. So connect con.cursor will obtain the cursor object, and using this cursor execute the SQL command. What SQL command you want to execute? Essentially this data is to be inserted, so the query will be insert into students. This is the field list, name, address, city, pin code, and the values to be stored in those respective fields are these variables: name, address, city, and pin code. So this is the query to be executed. That will be executed. If it is successful, then the result will be committed and it will generate, or it will create a variable called msg, message is equal to record successfully added. If at all it happens to be the case that there is a certain error, to account for that error, all this is put into a try block. So in case of error, the except block will take over. You don't want anything untoward to happen in your database, so therefore you have to roll it back, and message is equal to error in insert operation will be the message. So in the event of successful insert SQL query, message will be record successfully added, otherwise it will be error in insert operation. In any case, you have to display these messages on the result.html. So render template result.html along with an attribute or parameter msg. So that msg will be flashed on this result.html. So what is that of course then we have to look for result.html, what is there in result.html. Okay, so this is one function, just a menu. This is another function which will open a form. When the form is posted, the insert operation will be either performed or not performed. In both the cases, this finally block will render this result.html. Now result.html will just flash this message msg. Result of insert operation will be the value of this msg variable. Either it will be a success message or a failure message, and then followed by that it will give a hyperlink to go back to the home page. So that will take me to this /URL. Right? This is the result.html. And finally, there is a /list URL which is defined, and it is mapped to a view function called list. So what you have to do? You have to extract all the records that are currently present in the students table, and that can be done by a SQL query called select. So select star from students is the query to be executed. So obtain the cursor object and cursor.execute. The result of this cursor.execute will be a result set which will be stored in the rows variable. Taking these rows as a variable or as an attribute to this render template function, this list.html will be rendered. Okay, so obviously what is there in the list.html? So this is the final piece of code which is required for this SQLite based application. The list.html is, again, it is a table. As you can see, it is a table. First part of the table is to render the headers. All the field names, name, address, city and pin code are used as the first row of the table. And for the actual records, which will be stored anyway in the multi-dict object called as rows. So run a loop over it, put the loop in a Jinja 2 template syntax for each row in rows. What you do? Row name, row address, row city, row pin. All these are the field names, and row name will give me the value of the name field in the first row. This will print the first row. Next iteration of the for loop will take place. It will take the second row, third row, fourth row and so on, and each of these elements will be stored in a table row. So this is the first row is the header. All the field names will be displayed as the first row, and the subsequent rows will contain the data from all the records in the students table. Okay, so this is the effect of list.html. At the end of the table, again a hyperlink to go back to the menu or go back to the home page is provided. So you can go back to the menu, and if you want, you can add a new record or list it again. So these are all the different pieces of codes, some HTML templates, the URLs defined in your Python Flask application, associated view functions, everything is in front of you. Now we will execute this and see what is the result. So our Python Flask application is written in run.py. So execute that. The server will start. Now you have to go to the browser and give the URL which will open up the menu. So in the browser, just enter localhost 5000 / which takes you to the home view function. It gives you a menu with two hyperlinks: add new record and show list. So first I will click the show list link, and you should be able to see the records that are presently available in the students table of your SQLite table. So these are the records. You can verify the presence of these records by going to the SQL Studio and verifying that these records are there. There are 5 records. So just go back to the SQL Studio screen and verify it. So as you can see, the students table contains all these 5 records that are displayed on your browser's page. Okay, so the list operation is working perfectly. Now let me go back to the home page by clicking on this and click on add new record. What happens? Student.html will be rendered. It will be a form in which you can enter the data. That's it. So some data I will enter. For instance, if I say something like this and press the submit button. Submit button will take you to enter new URL. The associated view function will execute the insert query and add the record into the table. So the result of insert operation is record successfully added. I'll go back to the home page and now I will list. So this is the latest record that has been added. If I go to the SQL Studio, there also I should be able to find that record there. So this is the students table and the data in which if you find the 6th row has been added, this is the record that has been recently added. So our insertion and list operation done with the help of insert query and select query, that can be easily done with the help of your Flask application on the SQLite database. So this is the complete demonstration of using SQLite along with your Flask application.
In this video, I'll explain to you how to use the Flask SQL Alchemy extension in our Flask application.
With the help of this example, we shall find out how to use the Flask SQL Alchemy extension along with the Flask application to manipulate or use a SQLite database. So first and foremost, you have to ensure that this extension Flask SQL Alchemy is installed in the working environment of our Flask application. So this is the virtual environment in which your Flask is installed. So now you try to install the Flask SQL Alchemy using the pip utility. So I will say name of the extension is Flask SQL Alchemy. It says requirement is already satisfied. That means what? This extension is already present. You can also verify this by starting a Python interpreter and you try to import that. So I will start the interpreter and write import statement. If this instruction is accepted, then it means that it is installed, otherwise not. There you see the module or the package is already present. Okay, so that is our first requirement fulfilled. Next we have a look at the Python code which performs all the operations on the underlying SQL database using this SQL Flask SQL Alchemy extension. So these are our regular imports. For this particular exercise, you want to import this SQL Alchemy class from this Flask SQL Alchemy extension. So these are all the imports. Then of course this is the Flask application object. These two lines are the configuration of your app object, app.config SQL Alchemy database URI. That means what? You have to give the path to the database that you are going to use. The name of the database is students.SQLite3. The protocol that you are going to use is SQLite colon students.SQLite3. And then you have to set the secret key of your application by saying app.config secret key is equal to this. Okay, so this is again the configuration of your application object. Second step is to, rather the third step is to declare an object of the SQL Alchemy class which you have imported. It requires this app as the argument. So that SQL Alchemy class object I call it as DB. Now in this DB there is a db.model. Now this db.model is to be used as a base class for declaring a mapper class called as students, which means that this inside this students database there will be a table called as students, and this object of this students class will be each row in the table. So naturally what you have to do, you have to give the structure of that table. Now this DB object has a method or function called as db.column, which requires the arguments as the data type and the size. In the first place, the name of the field will be student ID. Its data type will be integer, and it is to be set as the primary key is equal to true. So this is the first field. Second field is name, db.column. It will be a string containing a string data up to 100 characters. City, db.column, again it will be a string with 50 characters. Address up to 200 character string. Pin up to 10 character string. So this is nothing but the structure of your table. Okay. Now every time when you declare an object of the students class, you know that whenever the object of a class is declared, the constructor goes to work and the constructor is in it. This constructor will be provided 4 arguments, each corresponding to the fields name, city, address, pin. So using these arguments, the object will be initialized. So later on there will be an object of the students class declared which will take 4 arguments. Okay, so this is our model. So 3 aspects we have seen: import, Flask application model, configuration and declaration of the model. So this is our first step of the Python code. In this Flask application, two URL rules are defined. One is the slash and the other is slash new. I will explain this slash new first and then we'll go to the slash. Slash new is mapped to a view function called as new. Now this URL may be called, or the application may reach this URL slash new in two ways. One is if the user directly enters into his browser's address bar localhost 5000 slash new. In that case, the method by which this URL is reached or fired will not be post, but it will be get. So therefore what will happen? This block will not be executed. This statement will be executed. And what it is doing? It is rendering a new.html template on the browser. Okay, so we will have to see what is there in new.html. So this is the new.html in which this is a form, and in the form there are four text elements. One is for name, city, address and pin code, isn't it? And then there is a submit button. When the user clicks, after filling the form, when the user clicks the submit button, it will be posted to the same URL by the method post. So what happens when the form is posted, or rather what happens when this new URL is reached with the post method? So let us go back. So in this case now, when again this slash new URL is fired, now the method is post, so therefore this block of statements will be executed, isn't it? So if the method is post, but the form that has been posted containing four form elements, name, city, address and pin code, any of those fields are empty, then obviously that data should not be added. So therefore what is to be done? A message is to be flashed, an error message, please enter all the field names, and this flash function will generate a flash message which will be displayed on the browser when the next URL is accessed. Okay, but if this form is properly filled, all the fields do have a certain value, then the else block will be executed. Here the object of the students class is created with four attributes or four parameters extracted from the request.form object. Request.form name, city, address, pin code, these will be the values that will be corresponding to the HTML form data. Using or taking these values, this student object is created. Now this student object is to be added into the database that is right now in the session. So db.session.add, add what? The student object. If it is properly executed, commit the operations by saying db.session.commit, and then the message to be flashed, record the message to be flashed as record was successfully added. So either this message has to be flashed or this has to be flashed. Where? When your browser is redirected towards another URL, show all. Okay, so this is the activity which is done when the user clicks on the link which takes it to this insertion of new record activity is done. Incidentally, what happens to the flash messages? If the record, if the data is not properly filled, that means if this condition is true, when it will be true, either name or city or address etc. will not be entered. Then this is the message to be flashed. As you know, the flash will be the message will be flashed when the next URL or next view function is executed. So after this flash, what is going to happen? This is not going to take place, the else block. So the control of the program will come to this. So in the new.html, if the form is improperly filled, the form must be shown again, but with an error message flashed. So if you remember, if you will have a look at the new.html again. So this is the template, Jinja 2 template code, which will take care of the messages to be flashed. Extract the messages by using the get flashed messages function and take out each function at a time and display. There will be only one, indicating that there is some error in the form entry, right? So this is the explanation for this part of your new.html. So that takes us to this else block. What happens in the else block? When the data is properly filled up, what is going to happen? This object will be created and the record will be added, and the browser will be redirected towards the show all. Show all, the URL for show all function. What is the URL for show all function? This is the URL for show all function. It is going to render the show all.html, and it is going to take an attribute which is a result of this query, students.query.all. All the records in the students table will form a record set object, which will be a value of this students attribute. Okay, so either by directly entering slash into the browser localhost 5000 slash, this show all HTML will be rendered, or after completing or after performing the insert operation, after adding the record, again this show all URL, which is again show all.html, will be displayed. So what is there in show all.html? This is the HTML code for show all.html. At the top there is again a template code which will rather this much. If at all there are any messages, and there will be, this message will be flashed when this show all.html is going to be rendered after the successful completion of the insert operation. What is that? The record was successfully added. That will be displayed by this. Okay. Now the rest of the HTML code is displaying a table. This is the table, out of which the first row is the heading, name, address, city, pin code. This will be appearing as in the first row in the as if they are the field names or the titles of the table. And you know that the show all.html is going to be rendered with one parameter, which is the record set or result set of the query all function, student.query all function. Okay, so the students is a list of all records. This is a list object of all records. So take one record at a time, and all the instance variables of the student object, student.name, city, address and pin code, are displayed in one row. One student object, the data is displayed in one row, such like all the rows will be iterated and it will complete a table of all the records in the student table. So this is the explanation of show all.html.
So this students SQLite database is already present in our application folder. I am now showing you the SQLite database using the SQLite Studio. And in this students database there is a table called as students, and this is the structure of the student. Remember, we have given this structure in our students class. This is a primary key, and these are the four fields: name, city, address, and pin code. So db.string is corresponding to, or is being mapped to, the varchar size. This was the size that was given, okay, and of which the student ID is the primary key that also we had given in our declaration of the students class, right? And right now these four records are already present in this table. Now our intention is to just to verify whatever operations that we perform on this SQLite database through our Python code, whether they are, you can just verify that those operations are exactly stored and reflected in this SQLite Studio. Okay, so just to show you that if the record is added, that should be visible here, and if the records are listed, those are listed, the list exactly should match with this list. That is the intention of showing you the SQLite Studio. Now let us start our Flask application app.py from the command line. The server is running. There are some warnings with relation to the configuration of this Flask SQL Alchemy, but then you can ignore. The server is running. So what we have to do now, to go to the browser and give this URL localhost 5000/. So I enter this URL. It is giving the present list of records, and it is also giving me a link to add student. So it will take me to localhost 5000 new. So if I click on this new, there is a form. Fill this form. Something like this, and then submit. There you see the list is now updated. The fifth record is added. Record is successfully. This is the message that was flashed. So if I click on this add student again, this will be again there. Without entering anything, I just press submit. It will prompt me, please enter all the fields. So all the operations are now verified with the help of this. Let me go back to this SQL Studio and see whether the newly added record is appearing in that or not. So this is again the SQL Studio interface, students database, students table. The fifth record added is being displayed here. So our insert operation is successful, and the list is also properly being displayed on the browser with the help of all this we have done with the help of the Flask SQL Alchemy extension.